Hi, it's Annie here, and I'm going to show you the red-eared sliders today and show you the setup here. This is in the basement, and the reason it's in the basement, I'm going to get a little more light here. The reason it's in the basement is because these are 100-gallon livestock tubs used on farms for cows or horses to hold water out in the field, and they make great tubs for turtles. They're tough, and you can't break them like you could a glass tank. And turtles need big areas to swim. Unless you have a huge glass tank, which is cumbersome and delicate, this is the best way to go. But you need to have it in a spot that can handle the weight of all this water, and that's why we have them in the basement. Now, if you have a basement that's in good shape, that's a great place to put it. If you don't have a basement, you're going to have to reinforce the floor where you're going to put this, because the floor in a house cannot handle this weight. So what we have here, let me just go over to here. This is Miami. He's the little male, and I'm going to feed him, and I'll show you. Maybe he'll come up. Let me just run over here and get the food. Got my plants over here. They're in for the winter, and I'm not promoting any particular food, but these guys, they like Zoom Ed aquatic turtle food. Don't have any sponsorship from any companies, and it seems to do them good. I've had them for 15 years now. Now, how did we get these turtles? Well, that's a story. I would never recommend anyone having turtles or practically any reptile, maybe a bearded dragon, but I'll talk about that in another video. And I love reptiles. I love snakes and that, but it's rather inhumane, especially with the snakes. Well, here's Merton coming up. Hello, Merton, baby. So I'm going to toss her some of those. Come on, Mert. Now, these turtles get fed once a day, and they don't get fed too much, because they can get quite obese. Here she goes. She's going to grab some. There we go, Mert. They can get quite obese if they don't get enough exercise, and most people have them in smaller tanks, and they need a lot of room. These guys swim around all day, and when they're not swimming, they're basking. Let's give some to Miami here, because maybe he's looking. Where are you, Miami, baby? You want to come up and get some food? Okay, so he's eating. Now, he's smaller. He's the male, and Merton over here is the female. I can get a closer look at her. And after they eat, they generally will head up their ramp. Now let me talk about this setup a little bit. Okay, we have the 100-gallon livestock tub, which you can find at Tractor Supply stores like Farm and Fleet Farm. I don't think Farm and Fleet has it, but Fleet Farm has it if you're in the Midwest. And you want to get the plastic ones, not the galvanized metal. And galvanized metal is not good for fish, really, or anything, because over time things can leach into the water from the metal. So we have these plastic tubs, and this is all just scrap stuff. These are some aluminum rods that someone was throwing out, and we bent them to make a cradle, sort of, right over the tank. The thing with the holes is another thing someone was throwing out, and that's a gutter guard. They were throwing out, they had replaced all their gutter guards on top of their house, and these are vinyl gutter guards, and I thought, hey, that would make a great ramp for the turtles. So off they go. It starts out underwater and it goes up. Now over there, behind there is just a bench, and I think you can see it there. It's just a bench on legs that was built out of scrap wood. And then the top part is a concrete tub from any of your big box stores, Lowe's, Home Depot. It's made of plastic, and we just sliced it in half. And the reason we use that is because when the turtles go up the ramp, they can sun themselves under the sun lamp, and they can't get out and fall onto the floor. Okay, continuing. You can go to a fish store and find these big filters, and some of them you're going to pay $400 or $500 for one of these filters, German made. These are filters that you have to have up above the tank, and that's why this bench with the concrete tub works well, because there it is sitting right there, can't fall off. And it simply is one of the buckets you can get with a lid from this one's from Home Depot, I think. And the only thing you need to think about is you have to be able to pump the water up into, here we go, the water comes up and it goes into this bucket. Now this pipe extends all the way down to the bottom of the bucket. So the water is being pumped down into the bottom of the bucket, and as the bucket fills up, the water is put through netting, which I just got at Walmart, or you can get it at a fabric store. It's nylon netting that they use for dresses or projects, craft projects. You can buy it by the yard. And the water rises up through the netting, and the water gets this high and it pours out. So as the water rises up through all that netting, I think I also put in some quilting stuffing too, like those sheets, a piece of quilt stuffing. If you go to the store, you'll find it. It comes on big rolls, and they'll cut you off, you know, a couple yards of it. And it's just flat, white, looks like felt, but it's not felt. It's like polyester quilt stuffing. And the water rises up through all that material, and it catches all the filth. And here's the strange thing. I haven't cleaned these out in a year, and if we lift off the top, and I'm not going to pop the top off right now because it's on real solid, there's absolutely no odor. There's no smell at all. And it's very strange because when we first had these turtles, they came in tanks. We got them from a school that didn't want them anymore. And it came with a hang on the back of the tank filter, and you could clean that filter, and in 3 days it just stunk. It was horrible. It just smelled terrible. So what happens, we pulled the plug on the pond pump. Now down at the bottom in the water is just a pond pump, which you can also get. And the pond pump doesn't have to be a real huge pond pump because this is a small area. The pond pump's pumping the water up into the bucket. The water is rising up through the bucket, through all the filter material, and the water is pouring out. We shut off these buckets, these pumps, the filters at night. Every night they're shut off, and the water drains out of the bucket. And I think that's what's keeping it from smelling. The bacteria in there are getting air. It's kind of almost like the tides in the ocean or something, because that bucket can be filled with gunk and slime, and there's no smell. There's absolutely no smell, and odors bother me. So the first time I opened it up, I thought, oh, this is going to be awful, and there's no smell. So once a year, I take the buckets outside in the summer and hose out the netting, and I don't wash it with soap or anything because I don't want to kill all the bacteria that are on there. And I'll hose all the gunk out of the bucket, replace the netting and the quilt material, and then just put it back together and excuse me, and put the hose back down in there, and it's ready to go again. So those filters only get cleaned once a year. In fact, this year I didn't clean them at all. Now, that's not to say you can't get away with that with this tank. This tank is cleaned and the water gets replaced once every 2 weeks. I replace the water in the tanks because, I mean, they're peeing in the water's building up all these different toxins that you can't see. You're not going to see it. The water still looks clear, but it's not clean. So all the water gets taken out with buckets. I just use buckets, take the whole thing out, replace it with fresh water again, turn the filter on. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the light. The lights have the special bulbs, and these are mercury bulbs. Let me show you what they look like. Just be careful with it. That's the big bulb there. That's a heat lamp, but it also has the sunlight rays, and that's important. You can't just buy a bulb that gives off heat. It has to be one that has the UV rays and any other type of rays and light waves that would be akin to sunlight, and that's important to keep the turtle healthy. They have to have that. And here's Merton. She's coming up. And because I'm watching her, she probably is not going to want to come out. But she'll get up there on the ramp and stretch her legs out and be sunning herself pretty soon. Now, what does a setup like this cost? Well, I said this has been over 10 years because I started out in these little tanks, turtle tanks that were about 30-gallon tanks. And the school didn't even have those. They had one of these turtles in a 10-gallon tank, and he could hardly turn around. And then the school didn't want him anymore. This was my son's school. They had been given these turtles, call it donated, right? So some people didn't want the turtles anymore. Their kids were tired of them, lost interest in them, so they wanted to donate them to the school. So these turtles ended up in what was called a discovery lab, and one was in a 10-gallon tank and the other one was in about a 30-gallon tank, and they couldn't get along together because turtles are solitary. They don't really like each other. They don't need to be with other turtles. I know you see them when they're piled up sunning themselves on logs in streams and things, but in reality, she was going after him and trying to attack and bite him, so... And she would bite me too. Let's take her out. She's a big turtle. I don't know if I can do this with her. Holding the camera. Oh, she's growing quite big. And she's mean. Yeah, she'd bite. Yeah, you're mean. She'd take your piece of your finger off. Hey, Merton? Okay, we're going to put you back down in there. Ah! Man, she's a big turtle now. She's pretty heavy. So, what does it cost for a setup like this to keep a turtle healthy? Well, at the time, and now I know the prices are higher now, the tub was $50. The ramp was made of free materials, and if you're going to make a ramp, don't use steel or anything like that. So this is aluminum and vinyl, so it can't corrode. The shelf there was made of scrap wood, and on top of it is that tub for concrete mixing, and that was $10 for that tub. So let's say $5 per turtle here. So we have $50 for the tank, $5 for the tub, but you'd have to buy a whole tub, so let's call it $60. The pond pump, we got it on sale at the end of the year, and that was about $50. The tubing that goes up was $18. That was part of pond equipment, and we got a coil of it, and it was pretty expensive. It was $18 for the coil, and it made enough for these 2 tanks. And the bucket was $5. The the material that's in the bucket, all the nylon netting and the polyester quilting, stuffing. That probably costed me about $10 as well. The bulb is now $70 for the sunlight bulb. And then we had the strip there, but you'd have to buy that too. So let me add this up in my head for you. At the time, now you can probably double it, because that was, like I say, over 10 years ago. So let's see, we have 50, we got 100, 170, 180, 190, 200, and then the brooder lamp that's there, probably another 10. So we're gonna go way over 200. I'm gonna say between $200 and $300 for this setup. So think about that. You know, don't be getting a turtle if you can't have the proper environment for them to keep them at least somewhat happy. And let's remember too, please don't patronize the pet store selling the turtles. You know, behind that is a company that's pumping out these animals. They're just merchandise to these companies. They don't care. You know, they're like selling paper clips. They don't care. If the animal's sick, doesn't get any vet attention, it gets thrown in the garbage, gets smashed on the floor. This goes the same for any small animals, for rabbits, guinea pigs. Go to a shelter. There's reptile rescues. A lot of times just humane societies have turtles that someone bought and then didn't want anymore. So take a look. Give these animals a home. You know, if nobody bought, and I'm going to rant here, but if nobody went and bought animals at pet stores, the pet stores wouldn't be selling the animals. And if the pet stores weren't selling the animals, these big animal-producing pet farms would not be in business. And, you know, I've seen videos, undercover videos of these places, and they are terrible. I mean, you know, it's just production, and there's no concern for any animals. And they're overpopulating the pet. Look at the shelters, they're full. So I've seen a lot of turtles at shelters. I didn't want turtles in particular, but no one else was going to take these turtles, and they were going to let them go. So another thing to remember, let's talk about this. You know, people let the turtles go. They know how the turtles can live. After all, they were living out in the wild normally, they would be. But these turtles that come from these places are raised in water that's just tap water. And they're raised and they grow up without developing any resistance to bacteria that you would find in ponds and streams. So if you release these turtles into a stream, they're going to end up being sick very quickly, and they're going to get sick and slowly die because their systems are not prepared for it. It would be like raising a child, you know, in a room in a house and never letting it out, and then when it gets to be 7 years old, suddenly you take it out in public. What do you think would happen? That child would have no resistance to any bacteria, any viruses that normally are circulating in the population. So you can't raise animals in one type of water and then dump them into the water that's full of different bacteria and other funguses and things that they can't, their immune system has no defense against it. So here they are. There's Merton and Miami over there. And I hope you enjoyed this little spiel on turtles. And these are red ear sliders, and there's a lot of those in shelters too. So if you want a turtle, think about it. Think about where you're going to put it. Think about all the money it is to have the setup. Think about all the work it is to bail this water out once every 2 weeks. And replace it. And we replace it right from the laundry tubs, which are over there. I run a hose, and I bring the hose over here. So filling the tanks isn't bad, but I just bail it out, and that takes a while. But it has to be done. So, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're thinking about getting a turtle, go on Pet Finder, check out all the reptiles that need a homes around you. Okay, see you next time. Thanks for watching.